Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Andrea Mason. Hey, Andrea.
Hello, Dr. Kimberly. How are you doing today?
I am great and so happy to have you here. And just so people know you, I'm going to read your bio, but then we'll get into your story. So, Andrea
Excellent.
Mason is a certified professional global motivational speaker and coach, an alumni of Les Brown. She is your personal accountability coach and solution specialist strategist, CEO of the Life Transformational Journey, The Path Less Traveled, and helping you to choose to press, play, plan life according to your LLC. Andrea is also a certified professional organizer and certified in small business and entrepreneurship, including obtaining 2 degrees and having over 2 decades in personal and professional development in social work and psychology. She is Amazon's best-selling author, contributing her chapter within an international anthology. She is also an author of her own book, Victim to Victorious, which is forwarded by Les Brown and also launched live with hosts Les Brown and Lauren Hudson. Andrea Mason is global ambassador and featured in several global magazines, international radio, and TV. She hosts her own podcast live on Spotify, Unleashing the Champion Within, and the founder of her global virtual platform titled Bringing the World Together with Andrea Mason. She welcomes your connection at her website, andreamasons.com. All right. Well, I know you've had a journey in that, this what I just read just kind of highlights the things that you've accomplished, but I know you have a story to tell. We don't all just start out at the place where we end up. We start out somewhere else. So tell us, how you started out and how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Yes, it has been an amazing journey to say the least. When we are younger, our story is told to us, but at one point, we must take the pen in our own hand and write our own story. Sometimes we get stuck in the midst of where we've been, where we're going, and we don't appreciate the time that's of the essence. That's our presence. Your gift is your presence of time with me today. Being here with you on your podcast is just amazing. And so, what I was able to endure was that many times we feel stuck. We don't feel like we fit in. We have imposter syndrome, especially in today's chaotic world. We are constantly competing ourselves with one another. And most importantly, the biggest enemy we have is the reflection in the mirror. So what I decided to do was, I was born in Colombia, South America during the cartel. And I came to America weighing in only at 11 pounds at 11 months old. It's a pound per month. And so I was adopted into my American family. And it was just a treasure, that unconditional love, that immediate satisfaction and gratitude. But you know what, doctor? When I looked outside of my four walls and stepped into that world, it was completely different. I didn't look like my parents. I didn't sound like my parents. And I endured a lot of adversities of life, which we all do, as individuals. And so what happened for me was I started questioning. And I was kind of like, well, what's going on? I'll never forget in elementary school, you have those projects of the family tree. Well, I started asking my family about our family tree, and we had some photographs and some stories, and I brought it to school. And all of a sudden, kids can be cruel, and they were. Andrea, you don't look like your parents. This person has hazel eyes. This person has light brown hair. This person has fairer skin. And I said, well, I was adopted. Adopted. What does that mean? Oh, my parents had put me up for adoption. They weren't able to care for me. And so then they were like, well, if your parents didn't love you, how are you going to love? Well, that was the downward spiral into my own mindset of my own false limiting beliefs. You know, it's easier to believe when the masses don't agree with what you have and start having you question yourself, as opposed to accept the nurturance of your parents and your family members because you see them all the time. They're always around and always supporting you. So then I started taking on a role of what do I need to do to fit in? And I was people pleasing. I was doing things to kind of make sure I was making the grade per se in school, making sure I was the best friend that anyone could be. But I was going against my morals, ethics, and values. I had lost my identity. So I ended up becoming the victim of abuse and bullying, shoved into lockers, thrown into trash cans, mishap after mishap. I realized I was a perfectionist at failing in life. So I decided to make a pivotal moment. I took life's adversities and began to create my own identity. That allowed me to step into the industries of social work and psychology. Social work to understand the cultural diversities of individuals all around the world. And then paralleling that and marrying that with psychology. Why we do what we do, why we don't do what we do, the ego, the super ego, the conscious, the subconscious. And as I developed learning about the mind, the body, spirit, soul, and your environment, that's when I started creating my own identity. We look at it in a mirror. Some of us look at a mirror that's maybe 8 inches wide, 4 inches tall. But when do we look at the full length mirror? When do we sit there or stand there, pardon me, and say, hey, you're worth it. You matter. I'm going to give you the best life regardless. It's amazing because this weekend I just went to a multicultural wedding, as you can see with the henna on my hand. It was a beautiful ceremony. And what I learned, doctor, was that regardless of our belief system, we want three major things in life. We want to be understood. We want to be respected. And most importantly, we want to be unconditionally loved. And in the midst of conversations, you're in mixed company, learning about these new cultures, these new individuals, your industries. Somebody said, you're not better than anybody else, but nobody's better than you. Boom. It was just a shock, epiphany, if you will, because we're constantly looking at those emojis that give us the thumbs downs, those critics of comments in our websites, our podcasts, our social media presence, even within our own community and society. We're always looking for that checked box. I'm very particular with my words. So I say, forget the diversity, forget the inclusion, forget the differences. Let's have the mindset of humanity. Let's have the mindset that we are able to create symbiotic relationships. What your areas of improvement may be my strengths. What my strengths may be your areas of improvements. And we're constantly growing every step that we're moving forward. There's no such thing as perfection, only constant acts and steps towards progression.
That's for
So
sure.
that actually, yeah, and that actually changed. You know, they say hindsight is 2020, and I was doing different industries of social work and psychology, working with inmates and individuals on the streets, individuals of all demographics, socio and economic statuses. And I just realized that that's someone's family member. When we look at them with a chart of a diagnosis, a prognosis, a stereotype, by putting them in those check boxes, we're eliminating the beauty that embodies them, all of their essence and gifts. So when 2020 hit, for me, it was actually an epiphany, a clarity. I was at the peak prime of my career, and I went from social work and psychology industries to then not coming outside and on the other side of the desk of behind the scenes assessments and supportive counseling and management of life skills and vocational skills and so forth, and abuse and substance abuse realms, that I went into the medical field to understand the body, that of different practices in the medical realm. And then I shifted to holistic and wellness. That was my prime. We found different ways outside of Western culture of how the body can heal itself, how you can really make a transformational shift, not only with wellness, but with nutrition. Not only with nutrition, but with the self confidence and balance, if you will, of the quadrants of life. And then it was an amazing journey. I was helping people, and then boom, the world changed. The business I was working for wasn't able to sustain a hiatus for that long as we were recuperating from the conditions of 2020. And so they closed their doors for good. I was like, now here's my identity. What do I do now? I was at the prime. I loved helping people with nutritional lifestyle. Was I was even the best version of myself. And the doors closed. And I'll never forget. I unplugged probably now, I would probably say as of 2015. And I started just eliminating what I was allowing in my headspace, in my body, in my surroundings. And unplug meaning TV, radio, articles, anything that I was investing in, I was making a conscious effort. So I would put on YouTube motivational videos, Disney World. I'm a big fan of Disney, listening to music that would parallel my emotions at that time to get through it. And I heard on social media once, are you going through it or are you growing through it? That resonated and hit me like a ton of bricks. It was Les Brown. I've been studying him and listening to him along with the greats of the late great Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, Earl Nightingale, Neville Goddard, as well as Jim Rohn, you name it, Zig Ziglar, all the greats. And I was just like, that's my call. And he was offering an academy at the time virtually. So I said to my family, we didn't have the means of that investment at that time, but I declared this investment was the first financial investment I made to myself. And I put it in the universe, the law of attraction to the creator, and said, I am going to make this profitable no matter what. And I started stepping into the realms of the business, press play, plan life according to you, because I feel life is a game. We're always having fun and there are trials and tribulations. But as they say, you can be a spectator or you could be a team player. And as I was developing it, and two of my outlets during my younger years was that of soccer or football overseas and that of piano. I started both at an early age, piano at 4, soccer at 6. And those were just opportunities where I can play, be myself, be authentic, integrity, and have fun when nobody was watching.
Mhm.
And that's what came about of my coaching speaking career. And then I wanted to take it a step further. How do I bring my authentic self for those who are not ready for coaching, those who are not really ready to go to a seminar or a speaking event? And I figured out you have to meet people where they're at. People are not going to come knocking on your doors. Hey, doctor, I need this information. They have to resonate with you. They have to understand you. And they have to realize that the sources or resources, if you will, have to have a common thread and connect with you. And that's what was so unique about Mr. Les Brown. He remember where he came from. And he doesn't have any shame. We're kindred spirits as we're both adoptees. And we were chosen. And so I decided to embody in this book, Victim to Victorious, where it's a living testimony, if you will, and a guideline, the template and the preface of the chapters are the pathways of the path less traveled, the life transformational journey that I have taken. And what's amazing about it is that it can connect to anyone at any stage, any age in their lives. And when you have that ability, as you do with your practice, as you do with your podcast, as you do with your presence, I'll never forget when we connected, and it was just a spark of energy, of light, of someone who was passionate about helping others and giving them faith to move forward. When we connected, your smile was so vibrant, your energy was amazing, and it was just a beautiful connection that we have to embrace as human beings when you make that connection. You meet people in your life for a season, for a reason. What is the lesson you want to learn that you can adapt and adopt from them? Or what is their situation that you're put yourself in a predicament? I'm not going to let that happen to me. This is an aha moment where I can see what happens if A plus B occurs. And that's what we have to do. We have to embrace. We have a story. We have the ability, no matter where you are in life, ladies and gentlemen, it's important that you know you're here, that you were given another day. You woke up. How many of us can say in the mirror, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's only this and I've only done that." We don't celebrate ourselves.
Mm.
We don't look back. Steve Jobs says if you connect the dots backwards, you understand what you had to go through to be where you are today. Embrace it. And what we have to adopt from this community, and I learned this from Les, is powerful quotes. And there's a few. Maya Angelou says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
I can't tell you how many individuals I've connected on every continent in this world speaking virtually that the world only shows you this much. But if you open your heart, you open your mind, we're a lot more alike than anticipated.
Mhm.
And we just have to be kind. It's that simple.
Mhm.
We don't know what other people are going through. If you look at the vices and mishaps and mistakes in your life, it's not because it was intentional. It's not because we wanted to become vengeable. It's because our mindset wasn't right at that time. We were emotionally hurt, physically abused, broken, some sort, way, shape, or form inside that allowed us to do this. And when we can look at individuals and not judge one another, how beautiful that would look like.
Mhm.
I do this exercise with individuals, and it's kind of amazing because they're like, Andrea, where are you going with this? Because, I like to kind of make it jovial. I like to have fun. I'm not here to judge. And I have three types of individuals that I share with them. I say, okay, what do you think? What's the first word that comes to your mind when you think of a sanitation worker? What's the second word that comes to your mind when you look at an adult entertainer? What is the third thing that comes to mind when you see somebody on the street? Boom. I give them about 3 seconds to respond. I say, now erase exactly what you've done because you have just compartmentalized and judged someone without even knowing them. We do it so often. The media and the press and our surroundings and people, decision makers of the world, put you into this mentality that you have to be either this way or this way. Take a second Take a moment to say, wait a minute, is this helpful or harmful? And does this align with who I am? Sure, I can say growing up, my family had put strong morals and values in me, but they have changed over time. But the underlying thread was no matter what you do what you love, do it best, and do it right. It's that simple. But because of the constant distractions and confusion and chaos of the world, it appears so complex. Take a moment. If you're upset, feel. Go outside in the rain and cry. Cry in the shower. If you're angry, scream into a pillow or listen to music that can resonate with that. If you're hurting, reach out. Les Brown says vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. Reaching out to people so you can be strong. Paraphrased, of course. Zig Ziglar says if you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. And the late great Bob Proctor says, dis-ease cannot withstand a healthy emotional mindset. In 2016, I was brought to the hospital, ICU unit, immediately. Didn't know what happened. I was perfectly fine, went to work. Next thing I know, I had breathing conditions and I woke up in the hospital. This was a concern because I felt all right, but only to realize this was just the shyness of the anniversary of my mother passing over a decade. I suppressed the emotions down so much. I had to do what I had to do. I had to take care of my family. I had to keep on going. I was not going to let this take over me. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to realize and recognize our emotional state, our physical state. If we're not in tune to it, the universe, the creator, will take that carpet right under your feet and knock you down. It was only, I was in the hospital for about a week. They ran a million tests. They didn't know what was going on. And they said, if we don't find a solution or situation, and if you're unable to have control over your body and your mind, the stay is till further notice. I was diagnosed with stage 5 myasthenia gravis, which is the complete shutdown of your complete nervous and auto nervous system, central nervous system. Now, pre-existing conditions were all autoimmune. And it was lying in that hospital bed after speaking with a loved one, said, you have to come home. This is not your lifestyle. This is not where you need to be right now. Your family needs you. And that was when I was studying virtually Mr. Bob Proctor. I changed my channel. I said, I need to be here. I am not helpful if my health is not intact. Your health, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, is your number one asset. Without it, you're not here. I shifted my mindset. I said, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to take care of me. Mm-hmm. And gracefully, I was able to bounce back of resilience, of my mindset. And since that day, February 22nd, 2016, to this current day, I have a clean bill of health. Mm-hmm. And I'm where I am today. Life is going to hit you. But you don't have to let it destroy you. You have a choice. You don't have to do this alone. We're now in a two-dimensional world where I can just click a button and I'm on the other side of the world. I could tune in and listen to somebody in Australia giving supportive counseling. You have the choice. You have the ability and the right to be the best version of you. Do it. Nobody's watching. Nobody's judging. We don't know when our time is expired here, unfortunately. Maybe if we did, we'd live our life a little bit differently. But the fact that we don't, time is precious. Should not be taken for granted, wasted, or for advantage of. Being here today, your presence is someone's gift. Someone's listening. Someone's watching. Be true to yourself, to follow your heart, not the herd nor the hurt. But I promise you, as a living testimony, success and joyfulness are on the other side. Back to you, Doctor.
Yeah, well, thank you for your story. And, you went through different seasons as you were telling your story. So, um, I'd just like to go back to the beginning because there's a lot of people who are in your situation and also on the other side. So, I know parents who were so thankful and grateful that they could adopt a child. And adopting a child is a huge process. I mean,
Yes.
they have to do the paperwork and go through all these things just to be allowed to adopt one, and then searching and finding that special child. So there's that side of it.
Right,
But then there's, a lot of children who have been adopted and they are special because they have been chosen. But anyone who has been adopted, they realize that they don't look like their family. Um, and sometimes even not adopted. I know some sisters that one sister had one dad and they had the same mom, and she's blonde and blue-eyed. The other sister, her dad was black, her mom was white, and she, looks somewhere between a black and a Hispanic person. Um,
right,
so they look very different. And, the blonde-haired one is thin and willowy, and the other one is voluptuous. And, but she doesn't look like the family that raised her because her grandparents raised her.
right,
Um, but regardless of how we look or how different we are, it does make us really special. And if you were to speak to someone who's in that situation right now, they've been adopted, but they're trying to figure out who they are in this basically new family they've been put into. They were
right,
taking from something that was kind of like natural, everyone looking the same culture, same language, and now they're in a new family and everyone's loving them and accepting them, but they're still trying to figure out who am I? Who am I?
yeah,
And how do I fit in? And how do I fit in and still be my unique self, be the person God made me to be, sharing my gifts, sharing my unique quirks, funny things. I mean, it's the weird, silly stuff about us that make things fun.
right,
Otherwise, we'd just all be boring and the same. So, what would be
right.
a suggestion, or what would you tell them to just help them find that identity?
Yes, great question. To find your identity doesn't happen overnight, and that's what we have to understand as human beings, that it's our patience which pauses us. When you are looking at your own identity, Matthew McConaughey said in a collegiate graduation speech, find out who you don't want to be, then you'll realize who you are. And not such in a negative connotation, for the example you had provided. Okay, well, I don't have the physical features of this family member or these traits. Okay, I don't have the intellect as these individuals. All right. But focus on what you do have. What are the good things about yourself? You know, energy flows where focus goes, is what they say. And what happens is we constantly have a reel playing in our head of the the naysayers, the non-believers, the critics, and sometimes it's even as powerful as I mentioned earlier on, our own voice. So orphans, adoptees, foster children, people who, as you said, even if it's biological and you're raised by your grandparents from a few generations, just know that what makes you unique makes you special. What makes you special makes you authentic. There's only one carbon copy of us, by our fingerprint. And know that there's no other individual out there that obtains the qualities, the attributes that you have. But be mindful that you have the opportunity and choice to mold that individual. So if you're in your early ages, adolescence, or even young teens, and you're kind of trying to figure out who you are, make a list. Keep it simple and
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I love this about my grandmother. I love this about my aunt. I love this about my mother." Adapt and adopt those traits.
Mhm.
Then, on the other side of the coin, do the thing. You know what? This attribute I'm not favorable. Favor, I'm not I'm not interested in, right? I don't align with it. And remove that from your qualities. You know, one of the key points that I do is kind of challenge individuals when I'm walking on their journey beside them because I don't dictate, I don't lecture. It's not my life to lead, it's not my story to write. I walk beside you as equal. And so when we have these conversations, I'll say, I'll say, ask your mom and dad. We always Thanksgiving's coming up in America. That's always a good holiday or not because it's good gathering, but then it's like, oh, it's good gathering because what are the stories? Are you still with that person? Where are you in your career? Are you still making, that's when everything comes to the forefront. Make it jovial.
Mhm.
One's perspective is another's opinion. And when you do that and you sit around the table and if you're in a what like I said, when you're in an event and you're introducing yourself to people and you're with family members, see what they say. Oh, this is my daughter and she's doing this or she's about this. Or be bold enough and brave enough to say, "Hey mom, what do you think about me? What do you think are my good traits?" Take it a step further into your uncomfortable zone and ask your friends. Go even further, ask your employer. Go even beyond that and ask a stranger, "Hey, what do you think about me?" And let's connect for a little bit. You get a clearer version of the persona you're emulating of who you are. And if it doesn't align with what you want, then you have the opportunity for self-awareness and discovery.
Mhm.
But you know what? Maybe I am a people pleaser. Geez, I didn't realize that. If these people are saying this in these circumstances, or I find myself in this predicament all the time, what am I doing to attract that or to deflect it? And going back to the younger population of the elementary and adolescents, look around your friends, look around the people you surround yourself, the TV you watch, the music you listen to, the books you read. Okay, maybe not the books, the digital stories you read on your digital device. I'm aging myself.
Mhm.
And see what it reflects as your personality for the next generation of those of the young adult and, beyond. You're in the state of being stuck. Find this with orphans, foster children, and adoptees because they're like, all right, well, I did the childhood age and the young, risk lifestyle. Well, I still want to be fun. I still want to have fun. But now I have to kind of adapt to responsibilities, accountability. How am I going to do that without being so rough and rugged? So there are different avenues to everyone because again, being a chameleon may be have its perks and its benefits when you go and you adapt. Okay, I have to dress a certain way. I'm going to a gala, or I have to dress in a certain way. I'm going to a sporting event or a concert or just hanging out in the backyard with my friends. But when you become a chameleon, as opposed to resonating and being relatable to people, you then morph into your environment. But then when you're by yourself at night or life is rough and troublesome, you kind of lose your identity. What do I do now? I don't have a group right now to conform to or to transform to. Who am I really am? And that's when depression, anxiety, isolation can be really prominent, especially for adoptees because they don't see a reflection of themselves within their environment.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then you said another thing also, where you asked the question about, the three people, the sanitation worker, the adult entertainer, and the homeless person. And early on in my career, one of the places I worked here in Atlanta is called West End, and basically it's inner city.
Mm,
And
okay.
so there's a lot of, homeless people walking around outside the mall where I worked. And I was always one of those people giving people money or taking them to lunch. I remember going to this vegetarian restaurant that I like to go to, and I brought my friend from the street.
Huh.
He's like, I'm not allowed to go in there. They won't let me go in there, mostly because
Oh,
they didn't want homeless people sitting in their
sure,
restaurant, right? And I
sure.
said, well, you can go in with me.
Oh,
And so we
wow.
went in and had lunch. But, one of the things that when I look at people, homeless or whatever situation they're in, but I especially resonated with that because I worked down there for several years, is that people don't realize you can switch places in a second. You think, oh, I've got my education, or my family's got money, or I have the support I need, and you could switch places in a second. And a lot of these people who were on the streets, that's what happened. One guy I know, he went through a divorce and he just couldn't get over it. The fact that his wife left him. He was an engineer, and now he's on the street because emotionally he could not handle the rejection of the divorce. Just like your situation where, you all of a sudden got sick. What if you had no family around you and you got sick and there was no one there to say, hey, we need you alive. We need you at home. Would you have died in the hospital or would you have come
Right,
home and become homeless because you couldn't work anymore? I mean,
right,
it can switch so quickly. And so for me, we just have to look at people as souls, as living, breathing, beautiful beings. And we're
right,
all doing from the outside, we have different, I don't know, costumes we put on. So when I go to work, I
right,
put on my work face. And when I come home,
right,
I put on my mom face. And we have
right,
all these different jobs or things we do, but when it comes down to it, we're just souls wanting, just like what you said, we want love, respect, acceptance, and to, feel like we have a purpose for being here.
right. And we also have to be mindful, especially working in the social work and psychology industries, that they didn't start there. We didn't start where we were. We all start at the start line, but it's what we do between, they say, not to be morbid in the cemetery, it's not the birth date and the end date, it's what happens in the middle, that dash.
Mhm.
And we have to understand people, meet them where they're at, and that was really difficult for me in the social work and psychology realms at the time because it was just like, what's their prognosis? What's their assessment? What's their diagnosis? What's their family background? Let's peel away every little layer and put it under microscope and make an informed assessment. But truth be told, doctor, as you know in the practice, you go to meet those individuals and they weren't there. They got there for some misunderstanding or mishap or, you know, missing a step. I remember when I was in the industries, I went to work at this institution that was solely for individuals who performed the heinous of crimes, whether it was murder, pedophilia, or something else, homicide. And I would go in there and meet them, and then I would tell my advisees and supervisors, I really don't want to see their sheet. Andrea, you're a woman, you're going in a facility, we want to protect you. I said, well, they're in a facility. I'm pretty sure I'm protected. Well, you need to know what their rap sheet was per se. And I said, I really don't want to, because I would go in there with a disposition or perspective about them of, oh my goodness, they did this. How could they do this? Or what have you. And I would come home and my family would know where I've been, and they were just like, oh, how could you deal with those monsters, those invalids, those those people? I said, as I mentioned before, that's someone's family member. And to be quite honest, they were either a witness, a victim, but that's all they've known in their mindset of how to act. So they were just going on impulse or reaction.
Mhm.
And when we shift that and live a life with attention and intention, that at some times steers you on the right path. And the path is not a straight shoot like a highway. It's through the valley, through the highs and lows and rugged. I there was a fellow digital creator, content creator that I was watching, and it was a rough time. They were talking about the repercussions and struggles of dealing with choosing to take their life, as well as some people close to them. And they said, think of life as a heartbeat. When you go to a hospital, what does the heartbeat look like on a graph or even in numbers? And he says, it goes up, down, up, down, up, 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 down, up, down. And he says, and what happens when it flatlines? You're no longer here. So that's the analogy of life. If you don't go through things, then you're merely existing. And if you're merely existing, you might as well feel helpless. It doesn't take much to just say, can you just sit down with me and breathe with me? Can you sit down and just be here in the presence? We don't have to say anything, just sit here. And I think that is what has been the constant, that has been the significant turnaround of the world in 2020. We were maybe not as interpersonal with people around the world at that volume, having accessibility to somebody, but we had, as you mentioned, human bodies of energies and frequencies in our work life, in the grocery store, on traffic, at the beach, wherever. And it was eliminated. And we were confined to our home. And if we didn't, for those less tech savvy, we didn't have a computer to, oh, I'll just hop on Zoom, I'll just hop on the social media. For the older generations or the introverts, they don't really have that opportunity to learn of that accessibility to another person. And that's how life was created, to be in the presence of people, maybe not as interpersonal connected, but interconnected with nature, with ourselves. And so we have to get back to that humanitarian mindset that there's no book of life or manual how to live life. But if you ask someone, there's a chapter of happiness, depression, isolation, anxiety, frustration, fear, you name it. We're all experiencing the same experiences, just maybe not on the same timeline.
Mhm.
And if we can remember that, that will help us interconnect and help one another out.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
That's absolutely.
And hopefully people will find some value and inspiration here and, think through how they're living their life and how they want to live their life and how they want their life to be because it is a choice for us. And we do write
Yes.
our own stories. So we just have to choose what we want for us.
And that's the thing that's the question that I always bring to the table. What do you want in life? And I get tears, I get gasps, I get silence for a moment because nobody ever asks someone that, especially us as women, nurturers, caregivers. Nobody says, well, what do you want out in life?
Mhm.
My goodness. Well, I have to take care of my family. I have to take care of my business. I have to take care of A, B, and C. When do we stop and say, wait a minute, what do I want in life? How do I want to be financially? How do I want to be in my health journey? How do I want to be as a caregiver? How do I want to be as an entrepreneur? Ask those questions and be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you can't expect others to trust you or expect you to tell them the truth as well.
Exactly. So I know there's people who would like to, connect with you in some way, work with you.
Yes.
So at this point, this is the advertisement point. So tell us your website. How do they connect with you? What services, things you have available right now?
Excellent. Yes. My website is www.andreamasons, plural.com with an S. And for those of you watching live on playback, I want you to put in the subject line where you came from, and I will gift you a discovery call, which is 30 minutes to really learn about who you are and where you want to go and how we can make that happen. And my email address is am.pressplay@yahoo.com. I'm on all social media handles of LinkedIn, my own website, YouTube, Instagram. And what the beauty is that I had a challenge from Les to really give my all. So on YouTube for 3 consecutive years, I have done a video. And so there's over 1,000 videos on YouTube for every aspect of life of what you're going through, men, women, children, mental health, and what have you. So explore, and if you found value, I welcome the connection. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So now I have
Yes.
a personal question for you. What gi-
Okay.
what gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
What gives me the most happiness and fulfillment of my life is personal interaction. I love meeting people. I love talking and I love learning about people. You can only get so much from a textbook, but it's amazing from the experiences and the stories that we have that I can learn. So that would be meeting people, whether it's two-dimensional or in person. I welcome it because it gives me energy and it makes me happy. You cannot say the word happy without smiling.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being here on the podcast and for all your wisdom and
Thank you.
really appreciate it. And I have one last question before we finish.
Sure.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
The best advice or experience or lesson that I've learned thus far, because I'm still learning. Socrates says, all I know is I know nothing, is anything you've gone through gives you the certification and permission to help others overcome and achieve it too.
Great. I love that. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Kimberly. It's been an honor, pleasure, and this is what it's about. This is about reaching out to individuals, touching their heart, spirit, and soul organically and authentically, and with great intention, great influence, and impact occur. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes.